Nukes by Humongous. Nothing says I love you like exploding a nuclear bomb on the object of your affection. If such is true, the U.S. government adores its citizens. What could be more proof than roughly 1,000 nuclear devices detonated upon its own people? When you consider the United States exploded a pair of atomic weapons on Japan, and the devastation was nightmarish, 500 times more discharges is a living hell. How does one justify detonating such a far greater number of nuclear devices on their own populace than on those they call foreigners? They don't. Even more surreal is that United States citizens paid to be irradiated. What did taxes of the U.S. working class buy them? A planet deluged in radioactive fallout. Residents paid to have themselves and future generations immersed in deadly radionuclides. They paid for a rapid increase in cancer. They paid to exist every moment under the ominous shadow of imminent nuclear annihilation. But the U.S. government can't take all the credit, can they? No way. Any country detonating an atomic or thermonuclear device has increased the lethal radioisotopes saturating the Earth. Any nation creating plutonium or engaging in uranium mining is possibly to blame for your cancer, the cancer of someone you know or have known. In short, governments participating in the production of fission or fusion have put us all at risk, and we've paid them to do so. Think how bizarre it is we send our children to school to pledge allegiance to a bureaucracy that's irradiated them. What does this scream about our professed love for our offspring? Believe presidents are great people? Do great people insist on the explosions of 67 nuclear bombs in the Marshall Islands, thus eradicating entire societies? So many of you reading this will do nothing to remedy these atrocities, concluding the Marshall Islands are a world away. In fact, this assemblage of atolls are located in the Pacific Ocean, directly in the jet stream blowing west to east across the U.S. Fallout from atmospheric nuclear discharges is carried on the wind and ends up back on Earth. Hence, each thermonuclear weapons test the United States performed in the Bikini Atolls irradiated U.S. citizens. 67 explosions, many of them by themselves hundreds of times more lethal than the bomb detonated over Hiroshima, are a nightmare to endure. This number doesn't include the 1,021 discharges at the Nevada Test Site, NTS, and a handful of other detonations elsewhere in the United States. Are we told these facts in high school history class? Of course not. They're the equivalent of bad press for the U.S. government. Do we question why bombs are developed and tested in the first place? Obviously not. If we did, phrases like, quote, for the good of our citizens, unquote, and quote-unquote national security would make no sense. How do you massively irradiate a populace for the benefit of its inhabitants? Quote-unquote national security? If you call the U.S. home, take a flight to Moscow. When you disembark, are there hundreds of Russian citizens awaiting your arrival, handguns pointed at you? No. If such isn't so, why does the United States possess an arsenal of nuclear weapons targeted at a population who could give a flying fuck if you travel to their country? Why would Russia have a comparable number of nuclear devices aimed at the U.S.? I don't rush to the international terminal at my nearest airport, gun in hand, whenever somebody from a foreign land arrives. If the citizens of the planet aren't interested in fighting each other, why so many devastating weapons in the name of quote-unquote national security? If the answer isn't residents, there's one place left to turn. Government. Bureaucracies hunger to wage war. Citizens don't. Governments require cash from these same residents to create the nuclear weapons that are destroying us all. Without financing from citizens, hegemonies wouldn't be able to produce these armaments, and an increase in resultant diseases would diminish. You assert how smart you are, yet how brilliant can you be if you're paying governments to kill you? How many of you have vacationed in Tahiti? How many answering me know said atoll has been inundated by radioactive fallout resultant of French weapons testing? Who wouldn't want to visit Palomares, Spain, where tourists proliferate, unaware the U.S. dropped 4 live hydrogen bombs on this village in 1966? Headed for the luminous lights of Tinseltown? Best conduct your research, since a clandestine nuclear disaster happened 30 miles from LA in 1959. A catastrophe which may have yielded 240 times more fallout than the egregious 3 Mile Island incident. These events are drops in the bucket when it comes to the total nuclear atrocities governments have executed on us all. Even so, after learning these truths, you're likely to forget them or convince yourself I fucked up. I assure you the latter isn't the case, but I'd prefer you don't take my word for it. I'd rather you investigate the reference material provided to arrive at what seems the only conclusion. Bureaucracies are murdering people via radioactive fallout. Radionuclides are magnificent means of massacre. Not only are they lethal in minute quantities, they're invisible, meaning you could be ingesting them while reading this. In addition, they're often odorless as well as tasteless. Without a dosimeter or Geiger counter, you wouldn't comprehend they were present even after they made you ill. And what of plutonium and uranium, both undetectable by the above two devices? Radioisotopes are also able to traverse vast expanses upon prevailing wind systems. Most of these nuclides won't considerably diminish for thousands, millions, and in certain cases, billions of years. This means radiation from Chernobyl, Fukushima, and Simi Valley will be around well into future millennia. It's time we know the truth, facts hidden from us by governments. After all, millions of people continue producing children, unaware the aforementioned contaminants exist and have been created by bureaucracies we believe protect us.